Would you pray with me? O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. The book of Amos is the perfect encapsulation of what prophecy in the Bible is all about. It's not even very long. It's got everything. It's got confrontation with the powers. It has predictions about what is to come in the future. It has weird and densely symbolic imagery. And it has that classic of the prophetic genre, which is prophets objecting to being called as prophets, saying that they are just the wrong person to be a prophet. And this is every prophet, by the way. Every single prophet in the Bible objects in this way, saying that they're the wrong person for the job. For all sorts of reasons they give. Amos gives the reason. He sort of says, look, I don't have the necessary experience. Just look at my resume. It clearly says dresser of sycamore trees. And then down here under other relevant experience, it just says sheep. God calls Amos to be a prophet at a time when society was structured in an unjust way. The powerful thrived and the weak suffered. The whole society was built and stacked up to make that happen. And the people who were the most in power, they were the ones who Amos was supposed to go confront, this dresser of sycamores. It was this injustice of the world being structured so that the powerful thrived and the weak suffered. This was what Amos was supposed to do something about. And God shows Amos a vision about how this is to come about. 3 visions, actually. Each one is something that God was planning to do in response to the unjust society. The first one is of a great fire destroying the crops that are going to feed the people. It's a punishment, for sure, but the fire happens immediately after the king has finished harvesting his share of the crops, but before the people could harvest their share of the crops. So the effect is that the king is going to have enough, and the people are going to have nothing. And Amos replies to this vision saying, God, do not do that one. This is going to make things worse. And God listens. Takes these editorial notes and offers a second vision. This one is of fire, destroying things again, but it's in a much more egalitarian way. The fire just destroys everything. King and commoner alike, much better, right? To which Amos says, no, that's not good either. The problem is that the weak are suffering, and with this second plan, the weak are still suffering. They just have a lot more company, which isn't actually better. God, who seems strangely just fine with workshopping divine judgment of the people, shows one final vision to Amos. And Amos is fine with this one. Amos is okay with this third vision, has no objections. And this plan goes ahead. So what is this third vision, and why is it okay? Well, this vision, it's of the wall of a building. Specifically, it's the wall of a temple or a palace. It's a great, big, impressive wall, the kind of wall that a king or a high priest might have surrounding their seat of power. And there's a plumb line held up against the wall. Now, a plumb line is a kind of a tool. And the amazing thing is that nothing about a plumb line has changed or really functionally advanced in any way since the time of the writing of the prophecy Amos. Nothing about the plumb line has changed. We still use plumb lines today to build everything from a house to a skyscraper. A plumb line is a string with a rock tied to one end. You hold the end with no rock, and you let the rock drop. Now, today, maybe our rock will be sort of like a fancy steel pointer, or maybe if it's really fancy, then it's incorporated kind of like a laser beam to show exactly where the rock is sort of pointing, but it is a string with a rock at the end of it. That is a plumb line. The string, when you let it drop, it will form a line that is straight up and down. Every single time, absolutely every single time, it will be straight up and down. If you're standing on uneven ground, then it the plumb line will form a line that is straight up and down. And it's not perpendicular to the ground that you're standing on. It is perpendicular to the center of the earth. It is great. It's pretty important. If you have a plumb line and you hold it up against something that is supposed to be straight up and down, say a wall, a very heavy wall that is supposed to be straight up and down, if you hold a plumb line up against it, then you will be able to see if the wall, which is supposed to be straight, is actually straight, because the plumb line, every time, is definitely straight up and down, no matter what. If the wall is crooked, you can see it right away, because there's a gap between the plumb line and the wall. There's a gap between what is and what is supposed to be. Plumb lines are not tools just for looks either, although like having things be askew, very annoying. It's not just for looks. If a wall is crooked, if it's leaning over, then it will slowly, over time, lean over more and more and more, being pulled inexorably down toward the center of the earth. And eventually, the whole building will come tumbling down. If you want to build a building of any size, a house, a skyscraper, you need a plumb line. To build something of any size, say a society, you need a plumb line. Something that shows whether things have gone crooked. This is what God showed me. The Lord was standing beside a wall built with a plumb line, and in God's hand was a plumb line. And the Lord said to me, "Amos, what do you see?" And I said, "A plumb line." Then the Lord said, "See, I am setting a plumb line in the midst of my people Israel. I will never again pass them by." This is the vision. Amos has no objection to this one. Amos goes right along with this vision, tells God, go right ahead and do all of that. Reveal what is crooked in society. And this is what prophecy is all about. Amos, the prophet, holds a plumb line up to society and saw that the powerful and the privileged were living as if there just was no law, as if it didn't apply to them. Ignoring the Sabbath, cheating poor people out of what little they had earned, the powerful allowed to do whatever they pleased with no consequences, no regard for justice. Amos held a plumb line up to society, and it was crooked, ready to collapse under its own weight. Injustice will inexorably pull something down to its foundations. And if you hold the plumb line up to it, you can see it. That is the role of the prophet, summed up in one single image, in one single book of the Bible, in Amos. It's to show where and how badly society has gone crooked, to bear a message to those who are in power that they need to build a better world, build their society better, or else things will simply come crashing down. Plumb lines work exactly the same today as they ever did. Prophecy works exactly the same today as it ever did. And I've got news for you, good people, which is that you are called to be prophets. By virtue of your Christian faith, you are called to be prophets. Perhaps there's something in your workplace that just is not right. Policies and posters all over the place saying that all voices are valued, but then things just roll right along, never changing with who's in charge and what they're doing. Perhaps there's something in your neighborhood where every time there's a chance to build affordable housing, all the talk at public meetings is about parking and trafficking and whatever neighborhood character means. Perhaps there's a whole broken world teetering. There's plenty to prophesy about, plenty to hold the plumb line up to work to correct. And this is your work to do. Make no mistake, Christians. And perhaps your reaction in this moment is, I am not any kind of prophet. I am not any kind of prophet. I don't have the experience. Look at my resume. Sycamore trees. Other relevant experience, Microsoft Excel. Is that helpful? If you think that you do not have the experience, if you think that you do not have what you need to be a prophet, you're in good company, specifically the company of every prophet. Get your plumb lines. There's work to be done. Amen.